managed by the HR committee at JA. And 3 or 4 years ago, Jack Kosakowski went to John Weil and said, you know, we really need to revive this thing because it's important to what we do and to recognize what we have done. So we had fabulous people who created criteria, so John Weil, Howard Barber, Randall Mays. And when I say thoughtful people, I mean people full of thought to go through and make it transparent, as opposed to what was 100 years ago, sitting in a back room and saying it's this person's turn. I'm guessing it's never part of that, fortunately. So there are some criteria, just like there are criteria for the Hook and for the Flunky Awards. You have to have been in a JA position for 10 years. Anywhere in the country, multiple positions, headquarters, or field, not affiliated professionally with JA for at least 3 years, left the organization in good standing, and candidates appear on a ballot no more than 5 times. That's not 5, that may not be 5 consecutive years, it's just 5 times. There are 13 final electors and candidate. Person who becomes a laureate or who even recognizes more than one have to have 10 out of 13 votes for induction. So it's pretty rigorous. There are 3 stages, if you will. So there's the first group that takes the list from JUSA that says, here's who's eligible, and narrows that down to 5 or 6. And then there's the group that takes the 5, it narrows it down to some.
Start from 4 to 10.
Thank you, John.
And the second committee narrows it down.
And then the second group narrows it to 5, and then it goes to the electors. So it's very rigorous. It's not, it's a thoughtful group that goes through. The electors is a group combined Kim and Jack from the USA side, 2 field presidents, which over the last couple of years has been John Hancock and Lori Jacob. And then the rest of the group is JASAN members of one kind or another. So it's been a very thoughtful group, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate Jeff going to John and saying, let's do this, and then John working with Randall and Howard, who are, the 3 of them are just amazing thought. So that's how it happens. And so that's how we came to our friend Mr. Hemak. And we have 3 people tonight who will share their thoughts about Jim from 3 different perspectives of Jim's career. So we'll start with, as I like to call him, my history and administrative expert, Frank Evans.
In 1980, Gil Fowler hired me as a regional assistant in the Western Regional Office in Denver. And it wasn't long after I got there that I heard the name Jim Hemak. And then a couple months later, I met him in a regional staff conference. At the time, Jim was president of JA in Seattle, doing a great job. He was building the board, raising lots of money, expanding the program. A year later, Gil left the regional office and went to headquarters as Senior VP of Programs. And Jim was selected to succeed Gil as the regional vice president for the Western region. In those days, the regional VPs were kingmakers in terms of area president promotions and those kinds of things. But Jim came at that position not from a power posture, but one that was thoughtful, data-based, professional, and really just continued to build his reputation as a really exemplary JA professional. In 1982, Gil tapped me to come to national headquarters as national program director, and in that role I continued to work with Jim and have interactions with him. And it wasn't before too long that I learned that Jim was exploring other business opportunities in the world of franchising. In 1985, it was announced that JA headquarters would move from Stamford, Connecticut to Colorado Springs. That building would also house the Western Regional Office, and Jim and his team were expected to move. By then, Jim was a franchisee in Great Clips, which at the time was a fairly new concept. And to me, quite honestly, owning a hair salon has a strange thing for Jim to do. He constantly seemed to have a comb. He couldn't clean his own hair. He also wasn't a barber. He wasn't a cosmetologist. So I mean, it was kind of a little bit of a disconnect. But he had, you know, at those days he was a franchisee. His business was growing. He had no desire to relocate from Denver to Colorado Springs. And quite honestly, he also was looking at that point to kind of move back to his native Minnesota. So by the time of JA's moving day in 1987, Jim had hired a general manager to oversee the day-to-day operations, and it allowed him to leave JA and relocate to Minnesota. And actually, on fairly short order after his departure, he was elected a member of the JA Pioneers, the predecessor name to JASAN, and he remained engaged with JA over the years and would regularly attend NLCs. So, as it turns out, in the world of Great Clips, Jim was the first non-family member franchisee in the system. And then many of the other franchisees all had cosmetology and salon backgrounds. Jim had a business background. Jim also was experienced in operating in JA's franchise-like structure. So it provided a unique perspective for him to help in this new business. Jim, not being a shrink and violet, offered his experience, insights, ideas, and validations to the Great Clips senior management team. And quite honestly, as history has borne out, they became really good and fast friends. Jim functioned at a high level in JA as a regional VP, and one of the hallmarks of JA is its collaborative nature. It's a national organization made up of national and area offices. There are a lot of field and headquarters committees and task forces that happen over time to address ongoing things, to address special issues and stuff like that. And that was something that Jim helped infuse within the Great Clips system in those early days. At its largest, Jim's business operated 39 salons in 3 markets, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Milwaukee, which made him the single largest franchisee in that time period. In 2004, which was around the time that Jim introduced me to his general manager in Denver, Jane, he began to execute his exit plan from Great Clips. Jane and I got married in 2005. In 2006, he sold us the business in Colorado Springs. And as I went through franchisee training in Great Clips and attended other events, I would often comment to Jane that this feels an awful lot like JA. That has to be Jim's influence. It really was. Today, Great Clips is the world's largest hair care brand. We operate 4,500 salons in the US and Canada. All of the salons are franchisee owned, 100% franchisee owned. There are no corporate stores or anything like that. the sole focus of Great Clips Inc., the franchisor, is the success of the individual franchisees. That is their philosophy. They execute it. They talk about it all the time. The first two words of the Great Clips mission statement are working together. And that refers to the franchisor and the franchisees, and that is how they run their business. And the number one statement in the Great Clips value statement is, we are kind. Not a typical for-profit value statement kind of thing. So to me, Great Clips feels more like a mission-oriented organization than a for-profit organization. Again, that's something I tend to attribute to the team. So Jim has now fully exited Great Clips. And in recognition of his many contributions over the years and the impact that he has had, Jim is also a member of the Great Clips Hall of Fame. Those of us who have worked for Junior Achievement know that what we do on a day-to-day basis makes a difference. Our work has impact and meaning on the lives of the young people we touch. But everything in life has degrees. And Jim's business success has allowed him to leverage his JA company experience, his JA staff and leadership experience, as well as his business experience to really make a continuing contemporary impact on Junior Achievement. And what we heard today in our session really kind of amplifies what Jim is currently engaged upon with the training and executive development, leadership skills, stuff like that. So you continue to have a really profound effect on Junior Achievement. I get the two Junior Achievement. And Jim, we salute you and applaud you for this well-deserved honor.
We kind of divided Jim's life into three parts. So there's JA Staff and Great Clips, and then there's JA North, which I still have a challenge with, but that's okay. So next will be Gina Blayney.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks for allowing me to say a few words about my dear friend Jim. Before I talk about Jim, I want to talk about the person who really made this happen, and that's Patricia. Patricia, say think of your own career, and you didn't stand there alone. You stood there with somebody beside you, and Pat gave up a lot to follow Jim from Lord knows where, Minneapolis to St. Louis to Washington to Denver to back to Minneapolis, and I probably missed some. She was a very successful nurse herself, and she gave up some of her own career aspirations to follow Jim. So Pat, when we talk about Jim tonight, very good. So his legacy at JA North, JA Upper Midwest, I slashed it because I was Upper Midwest, Sarah's North, same territory, was deep and far-reaching and built not only on years of support but on a steady foundation of integrity and heart and relentless dedication to JA's mission. If you talk to Jim for 5 minutes, you know his commitment to the work we did, and some of you are still thinking today, Robin, I can't believe you're still working.
I'm so young.
Please keep doing so.
Jim and I, even though he has a long history of JA before I joined JA Upper Midwest, we kind of joined our support of the Upper Midwest around the same time, or maybe a little bit ahead of me. But because of that, we experienced the building of the organization, the recession in 2008. You can all remember what you did during those years. Those were tough years, right? And COVID as well. We have traveled with the Hemak to Italy, Hawaii, New York, York, Boston, Atlanta, and we have seen this wonderful man in all kinds of settings, right? Professional settings, personal settings, and you all know that what you see is what you get. It is full of heart and genuineness and kindness. That sits at the core of who both of them are, and probably why he's being honored. He is the person you can count on. As I read through this, I hope you think about yourself and answer the same. I probably can't. He is the person you can count on to not only lead, but to follow. He will cheer, but he will also confront. He admits wrongdoing, but he humbly accepts accolades. Look at him sitting over there, we're talking about that. He acknowledges what he doesn't know and he seeks guidance to learn. Which I'm not quite sure you haven't done yet, but he gives generously, he listens, but he also offers help. And he remembers milestones and celebrates them. Oh my gosh, how many times I appreciated that. Somebody could acknowledge a milestone, and then he has a party. Or invites you to dinner. I see Jolene nodding, right? I mean, he stops you in your tracks and celebrates what just happened. And that's pretty meaningful. You probably already know some qualities about Jim, so let me tell you how it's manifested itself at JA, the Upper Midwest, JA North. He's been a board, JA North Foundation board member. I asked him to be a board member. So we put him on foundation board for close to 15 years. He's been treasurer. He was treasurer during the time that we secured federal new market tax credits, which was an onerous process, right, Jolene? Took a 7-year payout. It's paid off. Okay, you're stealing my thunder. Sorry. It's settled in June for a net positive about $50 million. He was an invaluable member of the building committee. We literally walked down streets because we had an architect who needed experiential exploration. And we walked down busy streets to see how students would experience our marine facilities. I distinctly remember Jim doing that after he pulled up in his little Mercedes convertible. He sponsored, you know this is true, right? He sponsored tables and foursomes and dinners and cocktail parties and halls of fame, and all bringing prospective donors and friends, and my goodness sakes, these people must have thought, does it pay to be friends with Jim? He sat on the $20 million capital campaign committee, securing support and telling his JA story countless times to encourage others to understand the mission from a student's perspective. It's a good story. In addition, he and Pat have been Free Enterprise Society members since I can remember. They made a significant gift to establish the permanent endowment. This is all just for JA North. Okay, Jack's going to talk about JA USA. He secured almost another $1 million for JA North Friends Estates, sponsored JA in this town, and recruited volunteers from high school friends. I don't have that many high school friends. They do. They do. Still. Secured great clips, shop sponsorships, one of the popular ones, because they have wigs and kids get to cut hair. How cool is that? And then just when we thought Jim could surprise us again, is somebody truly extraordinary. He and Pat both made a major personal gift to name our new facility, the James R. and Patricia Hemak Experiential Learning Center. decades of giving his time, talent, and leadership, he put his name and his legacy behind the next generation of students who walk through those doors. It's a great story. He's received the bronze, silver, gold leadership awards. And by the way, when he was at JASA, he engraved the federal structure. How cool is that? Isn't that cool? And then in 2019, he was one of 6 individuals to win the National Centennial Leadership Award and run the New York Stock Exchange. That was that long list of support. The lasting thoughts I have as Jim is as a loyal friend. He talked us all down when the building project costs went from $8 million to $20 million. When I vehemently, Jack, listen up. When I vehemently disagreed with JAUSA on the new franchise fee model, Jim was there to share a different perspective. Or when I spent the last 3 months of a year-long succession plan to retire, diminishing the size of JA in the Upper Midwest in response to COVID. He was there. He said, I promise to celebrate, and we did. He and Pat were always there to celebrate or commiserate. He encouraged, problem solved, and offered support in whatever ways valuable at the time. Dinner, a phone call, coffee, money, whatever it took, he was there. Right? He and Pat. I know how much you love JA, but I also know how much you love the Minnesota Timberwolves. Pat, I remember you don't like them so well. So I thought it'd be really kind of cool to ask Alex Rodriguez, the new owner of the Timberwolves, if he would write a little something to Jim, and he sent a poem.
Wow.
Really, so well, he didn't really. Keep in mind, he's a baseball player and not a poet. Okay, this is really Chat GPT, right? Jim Hemak built dreams. Okay, here's the poem. Okay, Jim Hemak built dreams bold and bright, a JA legend guiding light. From JA calls to Wolves, floor. You probably do have floor tickets, I don't know. He champions youth and so much more. Forget the Hook Award. If you know Jim, he never won the Hook Award. He's still a little pissed about this. Forget the Hook Award. It's understood. Hall of Fame is better. And a medal. This Hall of Fame medal looks good. It's two-sided. Okay, hang on. It's two-sided. Wolves and JA pride. A medal with purpose on every side. So raise a glass to JA's name, a legend in life, and a hall of fame. Come on up, Hemak. Come on up, buddy. It wasn't fantastic, though. It's something that we should have on video. Okay, well, look, he doesn't, no, you gotta take it with the JA.
Look at that.
All former staff and boards and Janet, Sarah, and Jolene, and other staff members and board directors who worked with Jim Hemak.
Oh, thank you.
So the final stage, to date, because we know it's not over, of what Jim
dear friend, Jim Hemak. And I hope you appreciate, Jim, that, you know, I've been retired a year now, and Ed used to write everything I said. So I actually wrote this, and it's from the heart.
Oh my God.
And I don't have a teleprompter, so forgive me. But, you know, honoring a guy like Jim is such an extraordinary thing. In fact, early on, I would go to meetings and I'd keep referring to Jim as a unicorn because of his various aspects. And then I read the definition of a unicorn in the early dictionary. I don't want to say that anymore. So, go look it up. But it's really a privilege because of what he's done. So, you know, when Linda asked me to speak about Jim's contributions to the national organization, and really more specifically about his commitment to the future leadership of junior achievement, you know, I thought, how do you even begin to talk about the impact that this guy has had on the organization in terms of getting people ready for the future? You know, looking at the vision, the personal example that he's provided is just extraordinary. Now, I think as you kind of got from Frank's remarks and Gina's remarks tonight, Jim's career and involvement with junior achievement is really come full circle. You know, I think you all know he started out as a kid in junior achievement. Then he became involved on the staff of junior achievement, not just at the local level, but on the national level. And for those of us who have been around a while, you know that when Jim was involved at the national level, it was a really different organization. I remember, you know, Tom Rudder, who was my mentor, always talking very highly about Jim because he wasn't involved in all the politics that was going on in the organization. So that in itself really set him apart. But throughout that whole career, he has really lived the junior achievement mission every step that he's taken, even in his days at Great Clubs. But, you know, tonight I want to talk not only about what Jim has done in terms of the past, but more importantly, why it matters. And it does matter. You know, in 2022, Jim and his wife Pat established the James and Patricia Hemak Endowment Fund, committing an astounding $3.6 million launch of the Hemak Leadership Program. Now let's put that in perspective. Other than Mackenzie Scott, which is a whole different story, that is the largest individual gift that junior achievement has ever received in the 100 plus history. You know, that generosity is really rare, as we all know. But what's even more inspiring is that what that represents a deep belief in junior achievement future hinges not just on the strength of what we do, but the strength of the people that do that. There's rarely that you get a commitment from anybody to invest in people. And Jim's background with junior achievement enabled that to happen. And you know, what's interesting about this to me, watching it, is it didn't stop with Jim simply writing a check. He was there, he showed up at every session of the various leadership programs that he did, at the reception, at the opening session. He sat through all of these sessions, and you know, he shook hands, he listened, he encouraged the people that were there. So to the 160 staff people that have now completed the various Hemak programs that are out there, he wasn't just a donor. Jim was a guy that he was a mentor, a motivator, and in many ways the embodiment of what they hope to become, which to me is the definition of a role model. So through these two programs, first the Hemak Emerging Leaders Program, rising talent across the network has been equipped with the skills to lead high-performing teams and create psychologically safe and collaborative cultures. Now, what's the feedback been from these sessions? Because that's always critical. And you look at it, and there were words like life-changing, profound, and the most valuable learning experience in my career. That's what we did. And then when you look at the launch of the Hemak Strategic Leadership Program, which is that next step, senior leaders are now being trained in strategic thinking, organizational leadership and influence, and the tools for really the essential guiding JA through an increasingly complex and divided world. He's providing that experience to these people. So now, even with the success of these two programs, Jim decided he had to do more, and this time international. When you look at the Leader Exchange and Development Program, or LEAD as we call it, it was conceptualized to bring together early and mid-career executives, JA executives, not just from here in the United States, but from across the globe, to exchange and learn from each other. With virtual monthly gatherings, a one-week exchange or job shadow experience, the program's goal is aimed to demonstrate that our similarities are greater than our differences. That by looking at junior achievement through different geopolitical and cultural lenses, that we as an organization can lead junior achievement to new and creative ways to accomplishing our goals. So the campaign for LEAD that was started was a short time frame. It had a very aggressive goal of $521,000. And Jim was and still is chair of the Achievement Foundation. And I know that Catherine worked with Jim kind of behind my back to make this happen. And the gift that Jim pushed through the Achievement Foundation, and I'm not sure it was a big push, but without his lead it wouldn't happen. He set the stage with a $100,000 gift to make the LEAD program possible. And so as he apparently, and Catherine has shared this with me, he says, I want you to keep me involved on how's this campaign going, which as a good fundraiser she did. And it was like a very short campaign, and towards the end, we were just missing it by a little bit. And Jim reached out when he heard that, and he made a close the gap gift to not only reach that goal, but to exceed the goal for LEAD. So this act of generosity was entirely unsolicited. As Jim had already made this huge gift to the Hemak Foundation to lead this, he had asked to stay informed of the campaign and expressing the desire to make sure that it not only met but exceeded its goal. So Jim's involvement was not only unexpected, it was really deeply inspiring to not just those of us that were committed to the program, but in getting other people to support the LEAD program. In getting us to this final gap. So, oftentimes when we talk about legacy, we often talk about what has happened in the past. Jim is different because of his commitment to leadership development. It's not just about the legacy of what's happened in the past, but the seeds this guy has planted is going to be his real legacy in terms of the organization and the changes that are going to take place. So Jim, your belief in junior achievement and its people has it's really planted seeds that are going to grow in the future, that hopefully you're going to be around a long time. You're going to be able to see those seeds pay off. But Jay is going to be stronger, not just now, but it's going to be stronger in the future. So it's that commitment that you made. And guess just going off script here a little bit, you know, working with Jim, you say, I wonder what prompted all of this. And Jim and I have had a lot of personal conversations, and many of you in this room experienced the GE training that took place, some of the training that took place through Accenture that changed many of our careers. And candidly, that wasn't happening anymore. And I think that had an impact on Jim's career, and that's why he invested in me. So Jim, when I think of you, and I know pretty much everybody personally through the years that have been inducted in the Professional Staff Hall of Fame, there is nobody in that group, a lot of great people, but nobody that has played the different roles that you have played. And I think you are the epitome of that Hall of Fame group. And I think you're going to be a tough guy to pass in the future. So thank you.
I wish my mother was still living. But my wife is here. Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I am just totally, I heard it, humbled and appreciative of all of this. I mean, this is just absolutely wonderful. For Frank and Gina and Jack, I appreciate the wonderful comments. Far beyond my expectations and much more than I wrote for you. Appreciate you expanding on that. You did a really nice job. And Jason Group, thank you for providing for the environment for having this award and reinstituting it. I mean, Dak for a ways, Don and I were fighting and working to get the award reinstituted. And for good reason. I never thought I'd be qualified for it, to be honest with you. I just remember, I mentioned, he mentioned a number of people tonight, but two of my best friends, and I think names that we might know, who are in the hall, Ryan Cody and Bill Palmer, both career JA professionals their entire career. And the two closest friends I have mentioned, both told me how important it was for them, that they devoted their career and that they were inducted into JA Staff Hall of Fame. And that was motivation for me to want to make sure that their legacy and their memory was not forgotten. When we were talking with Jack, was very receptive in terms of getting the award of the institute. So I appreciate that. Linda and Dennis and Christy, I thank you all for your leadership. It was March when Christy called me. It's been a long time since I had all these speeches going through my head. And you narrowed this down, but it really worked out really nicely. It's maybe an opportunity to have something that's so wonderful to thank you to the senior leaders in the JUSA staff for being here, all of you. And it's so wonderful that I've gotten to know all of you so well in such a wonderful way. As I look around and smiling, and I'm smiling right back at all of you. And thank you for being here. It's really important for me. And have you here. And we've got a number of friends that are here besides Jason Group and the JUSA staff. And I'm going to make a special notation for my real good friend who made it here, Janet Johansson, who's sitting here. And if there's a champion for junior achievement, my gosh, it's a J kid in Milwaukee from Jack's time, who was a tremendous entrepreneur, built an incredible company in 20-some years, right? And then Silver Venture Capital. Former chairman of the JA North Board, Gold Leadership Award winner, and a great friend. We served on a couple of boards together, and she was up here, even though she's not part of this staff part. So I appreciate that. And gosh, and you know, the challenge when you start mentioning names is you're going to forget somebody and forget their name. And so hopefully that won't happen, but in my heart. So there you go. So I'm glad you're all here. Thank you all for coming. I know a number of you made a special trip here just because of this, and we had a really very, very grateful for you to be here. So thank you. I love it. So in any case, I just thought I'd do a little quick sort of run through, although my history has sort of been accentuated or talked about already through Frank and Jack and Gina, but I'm going to just sort of go through it because there are some people that I think come up there and I'd just like to share a couple thoughts about. But it's sort of for the fourth phase over the 62. We're talking here another 62 years, and wow, when the organization's 105 years old. Over half. Lawrence and I really were friends. Just call him Lawrence buddy, you know. So anyway, yeah. So it's been quite a long time. So I started as a JA kid. How many of you started as a JA kid? Okay, here we are. And it was a life-changing experience for me, and got me on the path to become more and more involved. So that was phase one. Like Jack and knowing probably a number of others, there was a volunteer program who took a special interest and gave me encouragement and set me up. For him to sit here tonight. So that was the first phase through that JA student experience and NAJAC, as we call it. How many NAJAC people are here? I know a number of you. Oh my God, I didn't realize so many. So the NAJAC patrons experience, and then I spent a little time in service and started my career in junior achievement, and 16 years with junior achievement through Richmond, Indiana, into St. Louis, where I met my dear wife. And I have to stop and give her a tremendous amount of credit. It was alluded to by Gina, but she had a very successful career teaching internal newborn nursing at a collegiate level. And every time I made a change with my JA career, I had an interruption with her career. And that I told her many times, I'm going to pay the price. She wants to go to Hawaii every year, we go to Hawaii. And a few other places as well. But she's done that for me in my career, particularly with junior achievement. Back in the day where if you were to grow the junior achievement, the next job was a junior achievement. A lot of you can identify with that. Fortunately now, because of larger staffs and more opportunities for promotions in certain areas, as well as the remote working through the internet, that's not as needed as it was then. I mean, I made 4 or 5 meetings in 16 years. And I guess it would be worthy or significant to acknowledge, I guess, a little story. In our move from Seattle to Denver, we priced, the first home we had, it was in Seattle, we priced it for a quick sale. Well, we did something called a huge recession, and it's just at the absolute wrong time. For some of us that are a little older might remember something called the misery index. Okay, misery index. So you added the inflation rate and the interest rate together, and it was over 20%. And it was just incredibly difficult. So we had, with the anticipation that our house would sell quickly in Seattle, and it did. We wound up having 3 mortgages and 2 houses for 2 years. And it was incredibly difficult and obviously challenging time. And finally sold that. And at the end of that, I said, we have a son who was young at the time. I said, I can't do that again for my family because I knew there was going to be some more moves, more geographic moves that were going to happen. And I said, this guy, unfortunately, this guy, as much as I love working at JA Staff and my crew, I thought it was going very well. And I said, but there's got to be a different way to make a living. Well, long story short, I came 6 months later after, and we were broke. Literally, we were broke at that time because of all these mortgage payments. And 6 months later, I came to my dear wife again and I said, how about we open up a hair salon?
We got nothing else to lose.
At that point, I thought she was going to throw me out. She said, you think that's somewhere should, and I said, yeah, and it was a big freight company. It was the start of it. They had like 15 locations. It happened to be, coincidentally, they happened to be headquartered in Twin Cities. And they're just starting in Denver, so we were first franchise in Denver. And I remember the guy who was the CEO. We met for a cup of coffee at a Burger King. And he talks to this way about the fact that he said, I didn't have enough money as a company to take you out to dinner, so we bought a cup of coffee at Burger King. And now he's extremely well. So anyway, that was the start with Great Clubs, and actually one of the benefits of that whole thing was I was able to start a business up while still working for Junior Achievement. So I still had income stream, and so I thought through that. Well, that was when we started in '82, and then '84 we started with Great Clubs, and in beginning in 1987, the Lamar Foundation got connected with Carl Funke, was the CEO at the time, and said, we'll give you a whole bunch of money if you move the headquarters from Stamford, Connecticut, and we'll build a building. And Case Land Company gave us a beautiful piece of property in Colorado Springs that many of you know about. And so that's when, and so that building got built, and my office was in Denver. And Carl said, Jim, we're going to roll your office into our office in Colorado Springs. Well, we need to be by the airport, I didn't go anywhere. So the difficulty is Pat was teaching at Regis at the time in Denver, and there was just no jobs for maternal or nursing faculty in Colorado Springs. And it was either, 80-mile commute every day for me, or I live down there and she lives in Denver. I mean, it just wasn't going to work. Fortunately, I think we had 4 or 5 salons open by that time, and they were doing pretty well. And so I was said, no, I think it's time we just sort of move on to Great Clubs and my whole career. And so, interestingly enough, I think it was Donna and I that were the two that were posed on the national staff to, everybody, those people in Connecticut made so much money off the houses, they loved going down to Colorado Springs. They bought these big homes down there with all this equity they had out of their homes in Connecticut. And Donna and I were pretty well situated in our little towns in Atlanta. So anyway, I think probably go through a little more detail because that sort of tells the explanation of why Junior Achievement. Otherwise, I would have been, other than certainly involved in Junior Achievement for my professional stuff. All in all, it sort of worked out. So there was that JA Staff Alumni. And then the third phase, actually, was a pretty extended phase, and that's again where, and I give credit to the predecessor organization, JASAN, and that's the Pioneer Group, in which they elected Janelle Curley as president, I remember at that time, and it was the first time they made an exception for a non-retiree to be involved in this organization, okay? Yeah, what a concept. And so it was, Gene Ridgecreek, Don Floyd, and I were so honored to be selected to be a non-retiree to be part of the group. So, which is great. Because so many of my friends were still involved with junior achievement, and I was able to keep that with Gil involved, particularly, but a whole bunch of others. So that phase continued for quite some time, and certainly the JASAN predecessor group and JASAN today had a tremendous amount for me to do in terms of staying connected. So I really commend this organization for having that ability to keep people connected with who knows where it takes us. And the fourth and final phase, and Gina alluded to it was an NLC, and matter of fact, it was probably because of, again, a Pioneers meeting in Milwaukee, where I remember it was at the cocktail reception. She came up to me, some people said he would be in the operating board. I said, I should be in the operating board. And when the last thing President needs is some form of JA Staff to be on the operating board. And I didn't have the people resources to get volunteers on this outside of town. So I don't know what I can say. But she posed to me, she said, well, how about being on the JA Foundation board? I said, oh, I can do that. So that's the start of phase 4 in terms of the connection. And then we've done some things, like Pat and I've done some things in terms of some plans that they prior to that with the museum, conference rooms, the Laureate Jail and so forth. But that was, I think, the bigger part of all that. So Gina, thank you for that.
No, thank you.
Well, no. Yeah. So I must be sports load at home. So that's where it started, and then from there, in terms of just that involvement and having conversations with Gina, come to realize she kept talking about looking for lead sponsors for this building that she wanted to do. So that came up, and then all of a sudden, I think we sort of casually sitting one time after a meeting. I said, well, what if we just sort of did that? And I think, oh, okay. And it was such a matter-of-fact kind of thing, but turned out to be so
It was
wonderful.
after a finance committee meeting. I've always wanted to go to finance committee meetings ever since.
So then through that building process, as Gina's talked about a little bit, this is the fun thing. So I was on the volunteer side of the business as opposed to the staff side of the business. So Gina had all the responsibility and work to do the building, and Jolene, bless her soul, did all the construction and involvement with all the contractors and so forth. And they did all the work, and I got all the recognition. It's a great program if you can do it. So it was a lot of fun. And to Sarah's credit, she's now got that building filled capacity, 25,000 young people going through that thing. 30,000. I mean, that is just wonderful. So thank you, congratulations, Jolene and your whole staff for what you're doing. You're just doing incredible things. So thank you very much. So then the next thing is I got recruited to be on this Achievement Foundation board. Somehow, I don't exactly know how that ever happened, but just to acknowledge that Jack and Gina and Donna and Tim are all on the Achievement Foundation board. And in that conversation, I think Jack, that's how you and I got so connected. And I don't know, I was just talking, I don't know how it evolved, but I do remember we're talking about wanting to make it here. And I kept talking to Jack about, well, I'd really like to see a foundation. Why don't you established foundation provides some more transparency and so forth. Well, you know, I don't know. Well, so his JUSA operating board treasurer came one day and said, well, we got all this money from the building sale of the building, and our balance sheet's looking so strong that maybe contributors might not want to be doing a lot of contributions to us. And Jackson, oh, I got an idea for that. We'll establish a foundation with that money off the books like Sarah's done. And so there was the establishment of the foundation, and I'm pleased that I'm on that foundation board as a charter member with Jack and a couple of the folks off the JUSA operating board. And so that's just established now. We've been up for a year and a half, something like that. So our money that we've done for the funding has come through that. And now I'm just finding out tonight that must be Ed's good work back there in terms of promoting it to have opportunities for JA areas to participate if they don't have foundation board. That makes some sense for them to establish on their own. They can use that as a vehicle for endowment gifts and so forth, which is great. So Jack, and I'll give you credit for how we got established with the Emerging Leaders Program initially, because I know in conversations about the need for junior achievement to have a personal and professional development program that happened so we're happy to do that and endow it so that it's good sustaining itself. And then after Jack left, I had the opportunity to start working with him in terms of what's the next step. And the next step was the strategic leaders training session that we got for the president, JA area presidents, as well as senior people at JUSA. And that has turned out to be terrific. And Tim, I tell you, you're a real professional. I mean, you are terrific to work with and very capable, and it gives me tremendous confidence to make the steps to know that you're the steward and manager of that. And to Jim's credit and to Jack's credit prior to that, some of the staff they've had as well, they've done a terrific job in terms of the content. Pat and I can provide the resource, and we're happy to do that. But the excitement that comes out of this, and you're sort of alluding to some of the comments that have been made by the people, it's just breathtaking in terms of what it is, but it's the content and the people you have involved and the management of the program that JUSA has done. It's been remarkable. And Jill's the star here. She's with us. She's been a key contributor and presenter since day one in terms of the Emerging Leaders Program at the Crossroads School in Minnesota. And so popular that they bring her here to do sessions as well. I think that brings us close to today. And then I guess the next thing is tomorrow. And we had some good discussions with Kim and Jack and Paris and I, and they were good enough to, and I guess I offered the suggestion, just to have some outside third party look at what they're doing from the management development point of view, in terms of both the skills training as well as the personal development. And so they got Accenture to do a pro bono research project. So we got some preliminary results back and getting final results to come right. And it looks like we'll certainly be looking at potentially another program at the entry level that we're excited about doing and participating in and adding to the mix for yet another opportunity for Jason to have the personal and professional development. That's exciting in the future. In the meantime, they've got such demand on these things. There's 50 people on the list for emerging leaders now, and we have four cohorts, and the demand is getting bigger and bigger. Jill, again. Strategically, she can't get it fast enough. We've doubling up on sessions in years. We thought we'd do it sustainably, but there's so much demand for it. It's so exciting. So we're looking at how we maintain the endowment level at the endowment level and still take it easy. So I mean, it's just been very, very exciting. I guess I just want to add one other thing to my dear wife. She has her pet projects, and even it sounds so trivial. She has her passions. Right? Passion. Cool. That we're involved with. One is she's got a wonderful story. She came from a working class family in Shrewsbury, Missouri, the first ring suburb in St. Louis. And was in a nursing club in high school. And knowing full well she couldn't go to 4-year college because she couldn't afford it. So this nun from St. Louis University came to the nursing program and was sort of a mentor in the program and knew, apparently found out that was a great student. And so she went to Pat and said, I would you like it? And she said, well, I was thinking maybe to get into a 3-year program, it's a working program. She said, well, St. Louis University, we can offer some scholarships, not help you get scholarships. And Pat said, okay, yeah, nobody in my family is really, no women in her family is trying to college before. They gave us a shot, and she did, and she got a full-ride scholarship. We had another scholarship to provide for some additional funding for books and so forth. Not computers, that. But for books. And so, and this lady's name is Sister Na. Passed away 7 years ago now. She's about this tall. Okay. A lovely, soft-spoken lady. So Pat gets her degree in nursing from St. Louis University. And wild child she is. She went out to Hawaii and worked for a couple of years. And then to San Francisco back in the 60s. I mean, she was relating about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with all the dance stars and all.
Summer of love.
Yeah. So we're seeing another side of my wife. And she got her master's degree at University of California in San Francisco's medical complex. And her sister's back in St. Louis, gets pregnant. She said, I'm going to come back to St. Louis to help my sister with her baby. And so first thing she does is want to see about getting a teaching job. And so she goes to St. Louis University. Now, Sister Na, who was an instructor, is now the dean of the school of nursing. And she hires Pat now for her first teaching job, which is sort of an interesting full circle in terms of what transpired. So it's really a cool story. So we're involved with some simulation lab and professorship and so on and so forth. And one other place she's got a passion for is an organization called Helping Cause. I bring this up because all of you probably have heard, because it made such major national news, of the tragic shooting of one of our legislators in Minnesota. Okay, y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And you might, if you follow that at all, you might have found out that there was a dog named Gilbert, Golden Retriever, who was a Portland dog. Well, that dog was in this Helping Cause organization that we're involved with. Sponsored their but it sort of came very close to home in terms of an organization that actually only 5 miles away, 4 or 5 miles away from their house, that was very connected to the Portland. They had dogs there during the whole viewing memorial service that was in the rotunda, the Minnesota State Capitol, which and they have dogs there on duty the whole period of time, and that having another response as well. You know? So it's just it hit home very close to us in terms of this realization that Pat loves dogs. Very much. She likes small dogs and small dogs. She likes small living things. So anyway, so I share that, and so delighted to ask her to share some of the students. So that's sort of the story, past, current, and future. Let me just say, I am just so humbled. So there might be 3 people though that didn't vote for me. Is that what you're telling me?
Can't tell you.
No idea.
Damn, that's better luck.
Only
I don't need to know. No, I'm kidding. I'm very serious now. I am very, very humble. Sorry, I was going to ask this question. So, how many of you know, or met, let's put it this way, met the 20 people that are on this list? Okay, more than I thought. So, yeah, I mean, well, we shouldn't get in the bar, we could tell stories like you went voting. Probably be interested. You know, and I just looked back there, and I got to acknowledge one other person. My buddy Jim Nash and I were in training together in 1971 for executive director training. So, and we voted you most likely to succeed. I don't know about that. But anyway, so no, the people, the names on the list are just, it's very humbling for me to be part of it. I can't, again, express my appreciation and my humility and for all of you and all your work that you do on this team, the whole executive committee. And again, thank you for Jack and Gina and Frank for the wonderful comments. I'm very, very appreciative. So thank you very much.
To Jim and Pat, we raise a glass, whether it's empty or full. I've gotten to know Jim a lot better in the last 2 years serving in this role because of his work with the foundation and then subsequently with this award. And it has truly, Jim, been a privilege. I've learned a lot. We've had great discussions. No surprise to some of you, he's challenging in the best sense of the word with the how come part. So, Jim and Pat, we look forward to seeing your video tomorrow at lunch.
Okay.
Where he will be formally recognized by the rest of the JA that is here. And with that, I hope you all enjoy it.